Good morning to everyone. Welcome to PJ&C's Friday Live. It's going to be just Lee and I today, and we had a subject that we want to talk about because it's something I've actually been working on a lot this week in terms of our personal company and incorporating this in for entrepreneurs that we work with. So I thought it was appropriate to talk about. And excuse me, thank goodness for coffee, right, Lee? That's why we bring it with. So the
Yeah.
top three reasons why entrepreneurs fail. And Lee, I think this is very important for us to discuss too as you're building your own. So
Yeah.
the top three are inadequate planning or lack of education. The second one is underestimating the commitment to success, meaning being unrealistic with your timeline. And the third one is cash flow. And when I say that, I think it's very obvious. And it's funny because you had to name the reasons why somebody wouldn't succeed or tell them these things. It would be easy to say yes. That makes perfect sense. But when you're in the day to day, in the trenches of building, you lose sight of these three things very easily. So I thought they were very appropriate to talk about. The first one being inadequate planning or education. And again, Lee, not picking on you, but you're in the middle of that right now. So I think it's a great thing for you to talk about. Now, you have the advantage. You have about a year of education under your belt, a little more than a year now, working with us and also being behind the scenes of building a company. So that's, again, education itself. But can you explain where you are looking for more education? What are you doing personally to increase your education to build your own company?
Well, I'm doing research on my own um, with, not only topics about what I want to do, you know, public speaking, coaching, but business is one of my areas that I have little knowledge in. And so that's where I really need to bolster my, that knowledge and see what plans and actions that I need to put in place in order to, first of all, build a strong foundation to my company, but then, learn what the ins and outs, the day to day operations, tasks that need to be done. And one thing that I know we've talked about, and that when we were decided to talk about these topics, I done a little research on. Another thing is, and we've like I said, we've talked about it, is knowing what you're good at, and then finding someone to help you with what you're not good at.
Absolutely.
And so that's where I am in my ongoing education. And I know I have a long road ahead, and so I just those are the things that I focus on, and that's how I gain that knowledge, is by research and reading and things like that.
And also other education systems, meaning,
Right.
and I know you meant that as well. So that's why I'm just filling that in, is that there's never one perfect avenue, but
Mhm.
this gets back to what I talk about all the time, that the four pillars of that education itself is a whole topic that we could spend many hours talking about, because education can mean many things. There's expert knowledge within an industry that you want to be an expert in,
Mhm.
and that
Right.
requires education in itself. But the act of building a business, and that's what you are speaking to, is the actual building of your own business. And that is the business of Grit and King, is helping entrepreneurs build their business. And I will back up Lee by saying she has actively participated in our education for a year already. But Lee is a great example that just because you're receiving education doesn't mean it's built. That's a
Mhm.
whole nother process. And we're not trying to discourage anyone. We're trying to bring awareness to all of the different areas that it does require to build a business. So education is not one size fits all, but there is a lot of emphasis, especially online. It's very trendy to work with a coach in an industry. And again, that is great. I'm never going to knock it, and I will encourage every entrepreneur to do that. What we're speaking about is business education as well, that there needs to be just as much effort and emphasis on business education than there would be on industry education, if not more. And that's where we're kind of leaning this conversation to today, is more on the business education than industry education. Because we will be the first to say that if you worked with our company, for example, I'm never going to be the expert for a chef to come to talk to, or I will never be the expert for breath work or wellness or any of those things. And there are amazing, amazing coaches in those industries that you would absolutely be silly not to work with them if that's the avenue you want to work in. And that also might be your built-in expertise of the industry you've been already in. So there's many reasons why it's that expertise stands on its own. It's one of the pillars. The pillar we are specifically talking about today is the business pillar, and how do you build a business. And so I thought it was interesting, though, that came out as the number one reason why businesses fail is inadequate planning and education. Because I thought about like this when I was looking through this research earlier in the week, that planning and education to me are symbiotic, that you cannot have one without the other. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs think on paper, I'm going to write it down, draw it out, which is always the first step. But how do you do the thing? How do you build the proper workflows? How do you automate things that can be automated nowadays? For example, and I use this in our program, that nowadays it's possible to not have a receptionist, to go without a full accounting department, because those things are just two positions that are completely automated nowadays with the right research and the right programs and the right automation in process. Well, how do you do that? How? I mean, in theory, it sounds great. When I was starting out a couple of years ago, the thought was, I want to build a landing page. How do I do it? Where do I go? And this was before there was even a lot of options out there. Those are the kind of things I'm talking about. There's many different little subcategories of projects that you have to complete as an entrepreneur to create the visibility and the presence of a company, and then to get it running. It's like turning on the conveyor belt for the first time to build something. If you have a couple of those stops within the process, in theory, so you have like a Post-it note there and saying, I need this, but it's actually not working. The minute you turn on that conveyor belt, nothing's going to work properly. You're going to have a buildup in one area and a blockage, and then you have to shut the whole thing down again. And that is exactly true with businesses, that if you have things in theory versus actually built out, it will never function properly. And I wish it was possible, but it is not. There are companies that build out systems. We're one of the examples. That's what we've done for the last couple of years, is that we built out that structure for businesses so that entrepreneurs that are experts in their industry can stay in their expertise. However, if you are trying to do it all yourself, it takes a lot of work. The average is 18 to 24 months. And that is with continual effort, daily tasks, making progress every single day. And again, this is not to overwhelm anyone. This is not to be a discouragement. It's to be a reality check, if anything. The second one, do you want to add anything to that, Lee? I know you kind of talked already, but do you have anything to add to that?
I think the next one thing that popped in my head, I think we're going to talk about. So.
Oh, okay. Perfect. So just keep going. So right. The second one is underestimating the commitment to success, is how it was plainly put. And I thought about this again, and I thought, how would I explain this? And the reality is, the first thing that popped in my head was Layla Hermosi. Okay. Her path is very different than Alex Hermosi. She's building for a totally different audience than what he talks to. So hers is building a little bit slower if you looked at it from the naked eye from his. Well, is it really slower? No, it's just different. It's just meticulous, and it's a different audience that it's almost like a sub niche of his. So if that's the case, should she compare her success to his? No, she's very successful. Nobody would sit here and say she isn't. However, it would be easy if you were in her position to say, well, I'm not as successful as him. Well, that's okay. Social media numbers are only digital real estate. It doesn't
Right.
mean anything in her bank account. I can assure you, with
Mhm.
everything in her bank account, I don't think she's lacking in that success. But that's the point, that we all have a problem with expecting results immediately. All of us. I've even been victim to that, because you put in a lot of hard work and then you expect the results, and it comes in its time, not in our own timeline, because of, if there's something that is lacking, it will bubble up to the surface
Yeah.
when you're not getting to that success level that you want to get to, or it's just not yet. That is the other option as well. So really, we have to be realistic. And a great comparison is going to the gym. I use that all the time. That when we go back to the gym, we want to drop the 20 pounds instantly, because we want results, and we want to be able to run like we used to, or lift just as much weight, or do as many sit-ups as we did a couple of years ago. Well, I always try to remind myself in that situation, well, I took the time to get away from it. Now I have to take the time to get back to it.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing that happens in entrepreneurialism, is that it takes time to get the results. Again, I can't drop down and do 50 sit-ups today. I don't care how much you bet me, Lee, it's not going to happen. Give me a couple of months, maybe 2, 3 months, and guess what? I'll take your money.
Yep.
So it takes that time. So, what have you learned in your own path to date in this last year of building and being an entrepreneur and growing as an entrepreneur about your estimate of time when it comes to success? What have you seen?
Well, I've seen how much, and I don't know if people really realize it, but I've seen how much time and effort that you have to put into it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not prepared for that, and like I wasn't prepared for it, it tends to become overwhelming. And so you just have to understand the effort that you need to um to have to put into it in order for you to get any result out of it. So even when you're at the point, I've also learned that even if you're at the point that you have your business structure, you have your service or your product or you have, uh, whatever you're selling or whatever your business is about, that even if you get to the point where you're ready to launch it, you have launched it, then you realize, and it popped up in my head when you said that, some things start to bubble to the surface.
Yes.
Then you start to see things that you may need to incorporate,
Mm-hmm.
things that maybe you were not, that needed to be tweaked. But it's always an ongoing process, and you really do have to have patience.
Yes.
And you have to have commitment. Commitment is huge, because if you do not have that commitment to your business, to those that you're going to serve, or to yourself,
Yes.
then you're not going to last. So you really need a commitment, and you need hardcore push.
Yeah.
Even when it seems like you just want to give up, that's the time that you need to dig deep down and find that
Mm-hmm.
extra power, and keep on going. Because what I love, something that you say a lot, is that what you want, or that success, is right on the other side. So you have to envision that, and you need to get over to that other side.
There's actually one more step to that, actually. What's on the other side of what you fear is actually
Mhm.
what you need. And that was something that I heard, and I'm trying to find a note, and of course I can't find it because I didn't plan to find it ahead of time. Um, that was something that I heard three, 2 years ago, 2 years ago now, and that has been one of the things that I remind myself every time I acknowledge and recognize that I am afraid of something or thinking I can't handle it, I always remind myself that what I need is on the other side of that fear. And so that I don't allow myself to give into the fear and become stagnant. So I think I'm glad you remembered that, because that's helped me so much. And something to note as well as we're talking about this, and I'm so sorry I cannot find the notes. I had an incredible meeting yesterday with a mentor, and he said every company will succeed if they can answer three things. It was, how will somebody gain from it? Your service. I've got to find them. I promise you, I will find them before we talk about this again. But it was so good. It was three questions, and he said, in his 30 plus years of being an entrepreneur, any company he invests in, if he can answer those three questions with the person that's created it, then it will be successful. So I will find those. I promise you. I apologize. I didn't plan on talking about that today, so I didn't have that ready. And the other thing to note is about education and planning in that stage. Found it very interesting, and I'm sorry I didn't mention this, is that the article stated that 75% of businesses fail on paper. So
Hmm.
not even beyond the planning stage. And I will tell you, how many things have we all thought up and have never pursued because we didn't know how? It's not a lack of wanting or willing. It's just we do not have the education to make that come true. So that's why we keep going back and stressing that that is the be all end all of everything we create in this world is education. I mean, again, even somebody that becomes a Michelin star chef, but there's several of them that have stated, I didn't go to cooking school or to school for a certification or whatever it may be. Le Cordon Bleu, I know very well. I don't know the other ones, but they learned by experience. That was a part of their education. So we're not just talking about one size fits all for any of this. And that's what is makes it so thrilling and so difficult, because there is no one size fits all system.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why this is something, all three of these things need to be really faced and dealt with along the way. And then the third one about cash flow. The article brought this up that said, think about a company that's making $30 million a year in sales. Could it face bankruptcy? And I thought about it. And the article stated, if you're always waiting on clients to pay you, for example, you are at risk at all times of bankruptcy.
Oh, wow.
So that really made me stop and think about some of these big corporations that I am aware of, that if they worked on the incorrect pay scale, even with clients, you are putting yourself at risk. The other thing it advised was, in the first couple of years, even if you're seeing success, don't go on spending sprees and upgrade a bunch of things. Wait, see it through, be patient. So even when you hit that turning point where the ball gets pushed over the hill and you're starting to gain speed, that is not the time to stop and celebrate even. So there is a lot of advice within even just these three, and there were more of them, but I just wanted to focus on the top three. That if we focus on these top three every week, how do we improve our education? How do we make sure that we're committed? And how do we make sure that we're keeping track of our expenditures and also building income within our company? How much more successful would a lot of companies become just from those efforts? If you could, okay, instead of the three questions at the end, like I said, that he had posed in front of myself when I'm thinking about, working with other companies, what if we ask ourselves these three questions every week? Am I focused on my education and planning? Am I realizing that my commitment has to stay at 100%? And am I really planning out how to either take on clients, investors, be positioned correctly in the industry, those things? If we just focus on those three areas every single week, how much success would we receive, and how much steam would start rolling just automatically from the efforts of these three areas?
Yeah.
So, is there anything you want to add to that, Lee?
One thing I did want to add too is, you know, and this was something else that I had read, capital.
Mhm.
in our company. So, having the education and a good foundation and all that is very important. But we also have to understand that along with the personal time and effort it takes, we also will need cash flow, or we need to make now uh, monetary investment as well as our time
Mhm.
and our blood, sweat, and tears.
Yes.
So that's something important too. So when you are planning in the planning phase of your business, that's something that is important to uh,
Mhm.
note. And I've learned that myself. Just not even um, I'm not to that point where I would even have to think about that, but I know by being part of Grit and King and understanding the processes, the strategies that we have to have,
Mhm.
that being able to have capital or money to invest into your company
Yes.
is very important as well. Not
Yeah.
that that would not that that necessarily determines its success or failure, but it is a key ingredient in the recipe for a successful business.
I would say that's also tied to timeline, that you can speed up the process as
Yes.
well. And I can guarantee that companies you see, say, there's a lot of programs out there. And for example, the MBA program I went through, there's a lot of people that have gone through it, and some have invested quicker in their companies and have seen more success and long term success. Others tried to do it more on a shoestring budget, and it just takes more time. And that's something we advise inside of our program too, that it's always going to take time or money.
Hmm.
One of the two is going to be the forefront. And if you don't have the investment, then you're going to have to spend the more time getting visibility and growing and things like that, just to get your platform, to be able to be visible. That's just one example. But some companies decide to invest right away and hire a bunch of different, say, subcontractors, or different companies to white label or to collaborate and have them work on your behalf, whatever way you decide to do it. And generally speaking, the timeline's shorter, but
Hmm.
then your overhead is higher. So there is it always has to boil back to what Lee said. What are you great at and what are you not good at? Because there's always somebody out there that can fill that I'm not great at point. I'm the
Hmm.
first one to call myself out. And for example, within Grit and King, I am best in PR, in marketing, in content, and storytelling and planning. I'm very good at big picture planning. Where I am not good at is being my own VA. I'm never going to be good at organizing my email inbox. Not going to happen. It's just not. I've resigned myself. I must check my email like 5 times every day because I don't want to miss something, because I know I'm not good at keeping up on it. So that's a sacrifice I have to fix because it's time. But that's a great example. There's bigger ones as well, but there's like the accounting department, having, where does all of the income then get allotted to within a company? That's something else we need to think about. So all of these things within these three areas, these three bullet points, can fix a lot of the stress and a lot of the issues of why an entrepreneur isn't successfully launching their company, in my opinion. Because I could sit and argue all day within a business strategy that I would create. Most of the problems that I see fall within these three areas. I would suggest that, like I said, this be a daily, or I'm sorry, a weekly checklist for every entrepreneur to continually look at and decide: am I seeing myself grow in planning and education? What did I do this week in that category? What did I do to reassure my commitment? What am I doing personally? Whether it be, again, going to the gym and keeping track of your own self care, reading, things like that, learning more, um, any of those that are also in the personal area too. And then the third one is, what are you going to do to generate income? How are you increasing what you're putting into your company, time and money, and also who do you need to align with to get your company to work properly. So I think again, those three are great. And Lee, I think that you need to put a post in the PJ&C group today about this. And I have a feeling it's going to be popping up on my LinkedIn as well today. So we'll put it out there because this is something that really needs to be discussed more and more. And there's no the other side of this coin that we do need to mention is there's no shame in saying this is one of the three I'm lacking or I'm weaker at and I need to work on personally. There's no shame in that whatsoever. And if anything, that shows your strength. That's the
Exactly.
step. Take the courage to say, I need help in this area. And again, to the point which we always bring this back to in this group is there are so many amazing women in every different industry within the PJ&C group. I have no doubt if you had the courage to say, I'm lacking in this area and put a post in the group and say, hey, who's in this group that does this? Or who can build out a website? Or who's really great at accounting? I know for sure, and we've had her on our live, there's an expert that has been on our live and also our podcast about helping entrepreneurs plan out their success and income to work correctly for themselves with a lot of planning from her company, because that's what she does for a living. I guarantee there's somebody within this group that can help. And I guarantee there's an expert lurking around here. So if we all just have that courage to speak up and say, this is an area I need some assistance in, we can all support each other and help each other to grow. So,
Yes.
is there anything you want to add to that, Lee?
That was perfect.
All right. Well, then I think we adequately covered this. We will definitely make sure that there's a post out there today to go with this. And Lee will be back Monday with a live. And then we will be back obviously Tuesday with a new podcast episode. And then Wednesday, I'll be back live. And as I promised on Wednesday with part 2 from the conversation I had Wednesday, wait, that was 2 days ago. When I talked about hitting a plateau, one of the things that we use internally, and it was before we did it last year, but I think actually we're going to be doing this as a team quarterly as well, because I feel like it's something that really benefited everyone on the team when we did it. And so I want to bring it into a quarterly event for us. So I'll be explaining what we do and how everybody else can apply it too. And this goes along the line of knowing your why, having your ethics manifesto. This is another piece that you can add to it. So to me, that falls under making sure that you're not reestablishing what's the word I'm looking for? What was that?
Reinforcing.
There you go. We could use that, but to your success to yourself. Recommitting, whatever it may be, whatever you may need that word to be. Let's put it there because it may mean something different to each person, but to how to do that. And I think this conversation next Wednesday will help a lot of people to do that. So please show up for that. I want everybody afterwards then to actually do it if possible. And then you can drop it in the group as well and share with everyone. So I would encourage everybody to show up for that. If you can't see it live, then definitely catch it in the replay. So I hope everybody has an amazing weekend. Lee, I hate to tell you that it's going to be 74, I think, today here. I'm sorry. And it's going to be 80 this weekend, and which I'm very grateful for because of baseball practice and having to be outside for a couple hours. I'm grateful for that. All the moms that were there were so grateful because it's like, oh, we could be sitting out here in like 40 degrees.
Yeah.
It was very windy on Wednesday for our first practice, and it was still cold. But at the same time, I was very grateful because of all the kids, because of running around and things like that, they weren't cold. So I was really, really grateful for the warmer weather for them as well, because if we lived somewhere else, they'd be outside practicing very, very cold. So we're grateful for that. So we have a full weekend of family and baseball practice and more baseball practice. And I have 2 things on my agenda for personal care, self-care as well. And I need to make sure my family knows I need to do for myself. So that is going to be discussed as well. And so I'm practicing what I preach as well, that I need self-care as well. And I have been making it a point. I'm getting back to my meditation because, again, it's easy to get distracted with kids around and helping significant others out the door and everything like that, to sit down, plop down, start working. So it's my own accountability to myself that that's going to be starting again too. I was reminded by one of my mentors, and I thought, boy, thank you so much. I needed to hear that. So that I can pass on to everybody else. If you're not doing any of those things, please do that for yourself this weekend before you go and try to plan more and do more for your business. Make sure you realign yourself. Start there, because then
Yeah.
you'll be doing a lot better in all areas as well. So, Lee, thank you for having this discussion. I hope this helps you as well. I really
Yes.
do.
Very much so. Very
Good.
much so.
That's all that matters to me. That if that's, because again, selfishly, I always want Lee to gain, and I gain. That's the other thing, is I hope everybody knows that even 20 years into being an entrepreneur, this stuff needs to be reminded to all of us, including me. So that's what we're in it all together, I guess is my
Yep.
point. So, Lee, if you want to finish off, you can go ahead and remind everybody.
Remember, if we can do it, you can do it.
Yes, perfect. Well, we will be back on Monday with Lee,
Yep.
and I'll see you next Wednesday. Everybody have a wonderful day.
Bye.